Hello, panelists.
Hi.
Hello, thanks for having us. I came straight from the bathroom and you guys like already started. I just walked right. I didn't even say hi to Josh yet. Hi, Sean. Valerie and I took a flight this morning. So, hi everyone, thanks for coming.
Yes. Can you introduce yourself and your role on DIDI? Josh?
Yeah, my name is Josh Peters. I was one of the producers on DIDI. Yeah.
I'm Valerie Bush, also one of the producers.
I'm Sean, the writer, director, also a producer credit, but they really did the heavy lifting.
Awesome. So let's go back to the beginning with the script. That's where it all starts, right? And I feel like with your body of work and something I appreciate with other creatives, yourself included, is that through line. And I think if people have seen your shorts, they can see there are just like elements where you're like, oh yeah, that resonates in DIDI as well. And I'm just curious, with your script, how did it come about? Were those elements like influencing it? Did you have the script in mind, or was it after you made those things where you were like, you know what, I'm going to go to narrative now? Because they're also doc. So just tell us where it began and tell us more about that process.
Yeah, I think it kind of all happened simultaneously in a weird way. How many of you guys haven't seen the movie? Just curious. Okay.
Wow.
It's okay. Raise your hand. It's okay. Who are those two? Let's kick them out.
Yes. So the ending of the movie, no, I think the script, the idea of the script really started in 2017, and I was like still in my early 20s, and I think I was like 22 or 23, and I knew that just like the journey of making the movie was going to take a really long time, and so I was like, if I want to make a feature in the next, you know, what's that saying, like it takes 10 years to be an overnight, whatever. I was like, if it's going to take 8 to 10 years to make my first movie, I should try and start now. And I hadn't really made a ton of shorts yet, but I was like, I think I want to sort of start writing this feature so that if I get the chance to one day make a feature, I'm sort of ready for the opportunity, as opposed to like, oh shoot, like where do I look to go make this feature? And so the seed of the idea really started. I had made a short film in 2017 called 3,000 Miles, and it was really like this love letter to my mom. And it was like this turning point in how I approached making things, was just sort of like, I stopped looking sort of outwards in terms of like, oh, like what do I need to do to get attention in the industry or whatever. And I started really just like looking inward and sort of trying to ask myself what was like I curious about, what was I feeling, and a lot of those things that I was feeling really sort of happened to be about my family, and a lot of those themes sort of found their way into DIDI. And the seed of DIDI really was, what if you took a movie like Stand By Me, but set it in Fremont, where we shot, where I'm from, where I grew up, and had it star kids who sort of like looked and talked and sounded like my friends, who were all sort of like first generation, a lot Asian American kids, and just see what that did to the movie. And so I think because that's kind of where my headspace was at over the course of the 7 years I was living with the movie, I just again happened to, you know, be thinking about my grandmothers, and I happened to be thinking about my parents, and I happened to be thinking about like my friends and like what it was like to grow up in Fremont. And so the feature really feels like all of the shorts like smashed together into one sort of like smoothie.
Totally. Who were kind of those first people that you turned to when you decided to make it? And then maybe that'll lead into the follow-up question I have with Valerie and Josh. When did you all get involved with DIDI?
Yeah, well, I think the beauty of like the entire process was it felt so organic. The first producer to come on board was Carlos Lopez Estrada, who isn't here, but
he was supposed to come.
He
sent
made
the
this all
cigars.
But you know, that started not out of like obviously I needed a producer to sort of come on board, and I was just like, oh well, who do I want to make this with? And Carlos and I at that point, we had known each other for maybe like 4 years. I worked on his second movie after it was in between Blind Spotting and Ryan the Last Dragon. It was this tiny shoebox independent film called Summertime, and I don't know if you guys have seen it or heard about it, but it basically stars 27 young spoken word artists in Los Angeles who wrote and star in their own scenes. It's kind of like Slacker meets spoken word poets, and sort of this like hybrid poetry musical thing. It's super indie, super experimental, and I think just working on that with him, I remember, you know, having coffee with him, and he was like, yeah, we shoot the movie in 3.5 months, we don't have a script and we get our first outline in 10 days. Do you want to move to LA and do it with me? And I was like, what? And it just felt so bold and inspiring, and it kind of felt like, oh, this guy is taking all the cachet he got off Blind Spotting to go do this indie and believe in these sort of like young artists who, again, have never been in a movie before. That kind of felt like this artistic spirit that I just wanted to be around. I moved to LA, worked on that with him, that premiered at Sundance 2020. And it really was like the start of this very beautiful collaborative friendship. And then in 2022, I had sort of been working on the script for about 5 years, and I was like, I'm ready to make this. I don't know where to start at all. And I kind of sent it to him as like, hey, like I love working with you. Just from like a homie perspective, what do you think of this movie? I think it's bigger than Blind Spotting. Or I think it's bigger than Summertime, but smaller than Blind Spotting. It's set in the Bay Area, you shot here. Like, I'm curious if you have notes on the script. Also, like, I love working with you. Is this something you would be interested in, like, maybe executive producing or producing with a capital P, but like, I don't know, you're a busy guy. And then he read the script and I was like, dude, I love it. I'd love to be your producer and like really help you get it off the ground. And then he kind of, from that day, I think it was like March of 2022, it was like day in, day out for, 2.5 years until we shot the movie. And then that's kind of, I'll let you guys chime in on when you guys
Yeah.
come over.
Where's y'all comment?
You're next.
I'm next. Project. Hello. Okay. Yeah, Sean and I met on a panel. We were doing a working session through SF Film Invest, or SF Film. It was a mentorship, some of you may be familiar with it. I grew up in the Bay Area as well, so there's a natural inclination for me to be a fan of any Bay Area filmmaker. And we actually met on sort of this digital meet cute. Remember the early days of Zoom when you're like, you're going to a breakout room. Good luck. We hope we were supposed to meet with is on the other end. And Sean and I were not on each other's schedules. And we sort of got sent to this digital meet cute, and we just started talking. It just started talking about life, and I think that's what I realized is that I just like this guy, and I like the way he sees the world. He's a very likable guy, as you'll get to know if you don't know him already. But I just felt he was very open about his process, but also very focused on his vision, which I think can be two separate things. But they seem to combine really nicely to me. And we just started talking, and I think we both just became friends before he kind of sent me the script and said, hey, can you check this out? You want to go to dinner with Carlos? I'll be in town. And then I went to dinner with Carlos and Sean, and they asked me to join the team from there. It's just all, like to Sean's point, it was very homegrown and very organic. So it felt, I think I'm going to chase that feeling of the natural rhythm of collaborators coming into your life when they're supposed to, rather than forcing you to, because movie making is very hard, so you might as well do it with people that you like.
And Valerie? Yeah, and then I came about after Josh because, a lot of you guys have seen the movie, so you know that it's set in Fremont, California, and they needed a producer that understood the local area, and I had line produced Fremont, a movie that premiered at Sundance a couple years ago. And so yeah, they brought me into the mesh then, and I guess
we were very lucky to get her. She came very highly recommended, so we felt very lucky.
Yeah, you're like the person. It's like Fremont.
Yeah.
Did you read the script first?
Yeah, sorry, I guess we should talk about the script, huh?
There was no script.
Just fine.
It was 30 days
Just
before the
fine.
shoot. No, I read the script and I remember just being like, oh, I need to be a part of this. And I chased them down until they gave me an answer. I think I followed up probably 20 times.
Yeah, she did. But I think that kind of went back to the ethos. Like Josh has these Joshisms, and they're always these one-liners that
They're so
coffee
good.
table book. But
Hopefully you get
I think
them
the
today.
ethos of this movie really was chase the love, and it was never. Oh, what's up, Windsor?
Shout out to Windsor Antigravity Academy.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Anxiety. What was I saying? But it was really that. I think with every step of the way with this movie, it was never, oh, we need to find a producer who were the A-list producers in Hollywood to bring this to life. It was kind of just looking right around us, and then, Carlos came on board because he was a friend first before he was my producer, and that's how it felt every step of the way, and that's how it felt when Josh came on board, and that's how it felt when Valerie came on board, and it was very much the orbit of the film was kind of bringing in people who fell in love with the project, and it was kind of oh, this is the feeling we need every step of the way. We need to feel like we're just making a movie with their friends, because the movie was always intended to be homegrown, and like at the most, there was a world of this movie where it was going to star my mom and my grandma, and it was like, that's the spirit of this movie, even though obviously then we got Joan, but we did cast my grandma. So there was this spirit of like, we need to protect that, whatever that is, that like independent, homegrown, like grassroots filmmaking, without it getting like too tainted by the machine of like the process, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it totally translates in the film, all that love, and that's probably why so many people are so in love with it. But speaking of the machine, so for your Oscar nomination, it come after you had shot DD. So, right? Yeah? Oh, so for
I'm Ray.
getting...
That's
I'm a production designer movie.
Amazing, hello. So, how do you think your short films or like your team, like did you show those off to financiers to show you like, okay, I as a director can do this, or you know, we talked about this in the Whiplash panel, not we, but the moderators did, how they got Damien Chazelle to direct was because Jason Reitman agreed to kind of like be behind his shoulder the whole time. And so did you use those as sort of like a vote of confidence and like using Sundance to help get the financiers, or
I mean,
how did that come about?
I can jump in to sort of set the table there. I think to Sean's earlier point about casting his mom and his grandma, we were fully prepared to make that version of the movie. And I think and Sean always talks about this, and I love this term, the blind tenacity that we all had of saying like, we're gonna make this movie, we're gonna make it in the summer, and we're just gonna keep going. And I think to your point, the machine can get involved very many ways. There need to be these people, these gatekeepers, and I think collectively you're stronger than the individual. And I think if we collectively had this vision where we look at this thing, we think this is gonna be pretty special. And I think for Val and Carlos and I, it was just like, let's just get Sean in the room with people, they're gonna say yes. So that was a large part of our work early on, is just getting him in the room and having him do what he did and speak so honestly and emotionally and very humorously about his journey and the script. I think we knew that we were gonna have a little bit of traction there. And I think if you make a movie for a certain price, candidly, people leave you alone about who needs to be in it. So that's also a nice benefit.
For sure. I remember seeing, I think you posted on your story, Sean, of like the message that one of the financiers sent, like after they met with you, and they're like, we love Sean Wang. What were you saying to these people?
He's a likable guy, we said.
Honestly, we just knew those are the barriers, just getting them in front of people and saying like, it's okay if you say no, right? But just meet them. And they didn't say no.
I think like one thing to think about like when you're in a room with financiers is that a lot of the times like you're just convincing them to trust you, like not only with the creative but also with their money. So, and he was really great at both of those things.
Someone watching football?
Is the Dodger game? I didn't look at the score. No. Okay.
Awesome. Would love to hear about a little bit about Sundance too, and like how that played into the development here. How have labs impacted your kind of like growth and such? We had the Elise here for a panel yesterday.
Oh, really?
And she talked all about you.
Hopefully good stuff, because I have nothing but good stuff to
I
say
also
about it.
realized that we didn't answer your question at all. We definitely use 99 WIPO.
It was part of the submission.
I think I'll just touch upon that like really, really quickly, and also following what Valerie said. I think there were obviously like I had done a couple shorts like early on that were just like, okay, this guy made stuff and like Vimeo staff pics or whatever. I think when you're a young filmmaker, you're like looking for anything that will just give you any sort of stamp of credibility. So you're like, I'm a Vimeo staff picture. They're like, cool, but what is that? You know, like, not what is it, but like to certain people it means a lot, and to certain people they're like, what is that? And so I think the thing that really helped me was I made the short called Hags. That was like the New York Times released, and that one felt like, okay, it's not a Damien Chazelle Whiplash proof of concept, but it was this movie that started as research for DIDI, and it sort of ended up being like a tangential proof of concept. It was like, if you like this short, you will like this script. It's the same world, similar tones, similar themes through similar characters. That's actually how I pitched it. I was like, if you like this short, the feature explores similar themes through similar characters, but there's a much heavier emphasis on family. And so that was kind of like watch the short. If you don't like it, conversation over. But if you like the short, you'll like the feature, and we should talk. And so it kind of just gave us like a starting point. And then in that process, Nainai Waipoa, I think I had finished it, but it hadn't gotten into South by Southwest yet. And then somewhere in the process where like things were really picking up steam, it got into South by, and then it won South by. And so it was just like, we should strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah, proof of concept being we had something to trade with. Now we had the momentum that outwardly people look for, right? I mean, we have to acknowledge there's an element of that I think, but I remember watching Nine Nine Waipo, and I was like broken in half how much I loved it, and emotionally, and I was like, this guy, wow. And it just like gathered steam, and so yeah, there was an element of that. I think that's true.
And then, okay, we're just spend all day on this answer. But there was something with Hags that was really, really helpful, because I think to Valerie's point, sometimes when you haven't made a feature, you're really just selling people on like passion. And just being like, trust me, I promise I can deliver on the vision here. But with Hags, there's not like an official data point, but I remember the New York Times said to me, like, this is like our most shared and viewed short, like, of all year. And I was like, great data point. And I was like, it was this thing where I was like pitching the movie, and I was like, this isn't like a FUBU Asian American film. Like, I promise this is gonna resonate with like everybody. And like, you look at the New York Times short, and there were like 60-year-old men from Arkansas commenting on it, and be like, wow, I really saw myself in this short. And I was kind of like just trying to prove that point of like, this isn't this tiny independent film. Like, I swear, if we get this right, it'll have the same audience as Hags and more, because it's so much richer, and like, hopefully a distributor will buy it and put their money behind it. But it was like, this isn't this tiny shoebox film. Like, I really do believe that in success, it could be, you know, this thing that resonates with a lot of people. So I think that's kind of how I was pitching it, was like, this isn't small. Like, I really do think this could be like a big hit. Obviously, you have to pitch it that way. You're not gonna be like, no one's gonna watch this. But I did believe it too, and I think I really tried to just sell people on that data point specifically.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So,
Did you want to talk about
The labs.
oh, yes, sorry. Go with the labs.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The labs were great.
Great. Well, I think just to keep it short, like, this is a feature that I didn't want to rush. You know, like, the process ended up being 7 years beginning to end, but I really thought, like, if I'm lucky and fortunate enough, I'll hopefully get to use this movie as a chance to grow as a filmmaker and get to do, you know, I feel very lucky that I got to do the Sundance Screenwriters Labs, because that, like, changed my DNA from the inside out as a filmmaker. And even before that, I got to do like SF Film Rainin, and that's how Josh and I met, and like the Gotham Week Project Market, where I got to meet a lot of people who were just sort of like generous in the independent space and filmmaking in general. Like, these were people who had no stake in the project, but who were just like meeting with me like month after month, and just kind of being like, okay, cool, like, how do we get your project to the next step? And I think that's like this experience I really, really wanted and to have, to just be able to like have creative community. And yeah, like every lab I did, I think helped me mature a little bit as a filmmaker, and sort of like expand like my vocabulary as a filmmaker, meeting other people who are trying to get their features off the ground, and being like, how do you feel? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And being like, oh, like, we're hitting a wall here. Like, how are you solving it? And it was just, yeah, like, kind of, you know, that I don't think I would be the filmmaker. I don't think I would be mature enough as a filmmaker to direct this version of the movie had it not been for the labs that I did.
Okay, so let's get into production. How was that experience? Do we have, talk to the producers about biggest challenges on set? I feel like the movie just seems like a fun summer camp. Was production that way as well, or was it a little more stressful? Valerie's looking at me like, I don't even know.
No, I mean, it really was like a summer camp. We did a lot of like fun things throughout it to make, you know, a stressful environment more like summer camp. I think probably my favorite thing that we did on set was a talent show where during lunch.
Yes, I heard about this.
You heard about this? Yeah, during lunch one day we just were like, everyone come with a talent, and like the crew showed out. Like it was pretty intense, and Sean and Isaac, who plays Chris Wang, they did like this whole skit that was like so crazy, and Isaac was the director of it, so it like flipped the worlds. But yeah, I mean, obviously like indie filmmaking is going to come with challenges and whatnot, but it really was a lovely environment that we were able to create.
What was your talent?
Mine? I was actually one of the judges.
Me and Isaac did not win.
I mean, and I think from a production standpoint, I think the thing that we reminded ourselves, and especially when Sean talks about working on the film for 7 years, the script for 7 years, is that, I mean, you all in this room are going to be at some juncture in your career where you're like, I have been waiting for this moment for so long, and it's 25 days. If I'm not excited about this right now, what am I doing, right? And Sean very much carried that into, and his mom, and I will never make another movie not outside of a filmmaker's hometown. It was a dream, right? Like, it was just like, his mom was like clearing people out of the house. Like, there is an in-kind element to this that I think is really beautiful and shows up in the film. We met all the real Fahad and Soup that came through, like at all the characters that were alive in Sean's mind that our job was just downloading it from there, and I think that's, to me, is like, he was excited and buoyant and just had this energy that was contagious, because he's like, dude, I got 25 days, let's go. Get excited about it. If you're not, then like, go sell medical supplies or do something like different with your time, right? It's fine.
I thought you were gonna say I'm never making another movie without Sean's mom.
I love Cynthia, and she will be our locations manager / art department / Henry's right hand. So
She helped us find like primary locations for
yeah,
the movie.
she's like, this guy's in Taiwan for 3 months. Let's go to his house.
And she opened her own home, Sean's childhood home, for...
We collaged 2 homes. It was great. It felt very homegrown. I think just adding to that, it was a lot of fun, but that kind of what Val said, like, it was also hard. Like, I don't want people to think that we were just like, oh, we made a movie and it was super fun. Like, we were definitely like, stressing every day and being like, oh, are we gonna get the
Yeah, I
shots?
didn't sleep at all.
Yeah, I think it was like definitely the hardest thing I've ever done up until that point. Is just like learning something new every day, trying to, I don't think we ever made our day as far as like shot lists, but like knowing where to cut, how to cut, problem solving every day. But like knowing that it was going to be like incredibly stressful going in, like there's no world where I think this movie was going to be easy. There were like 20, principal cast kids, and there's just so much room for error, and we were just kind of like, and that's the thing with working with our friends. It was like, I know this is going to be hard, but we needed to have, or I really wanted to have people who I could lean on and be like, look, even when times get rough, like let's have each other's backs, because it was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah, and for those stressful moments, could you talk a little, or maybe give an example of like how you handle them just as a team? Because I think that's really important too, and it's a skill to like be in a very high pressure situation, and you're like, we're not going to be at this location again. We have an hour left. Like, how did you guys give each other grace and handle those?
I have one funny story first before we did. I remember me, Hanre, Sam, our DP, and Brianna, our production designer, or costume designer, shared an Airbnb. And like I hide my stress well, I think. I'll give that to myself. And I would always come home and I'd see Hanre and she'd be like, how was that? I was like, I think it was okay, pretty good. And on like day 9, it was just like a really hard day, and I just got home and I was like, I hope we got everything we needed. And Hanre comes home and she's like, how was it today? And I was like, I don't know, not great, I think. And she's like, oh, now you're a real director. You've gone through it, you're a real director now. And I was like, thanks, Hanre. Anyways, what was the question?
How you handle stress as a group.
I mean, open communication, I feel
Yeah.
like. And also, like, I think they did there's so many battles behind the scenes that I feel like I'm not even privy to, because as producers, they really protected me to be stressed about the movie and not things I didn't have to be stressed about. Because I think if I was, I would have not made the movie.
Yeah, like Sean, lunch is late.
Yeah, I mean, and even like higher level stuff, there's just no reason for him to take up brain space for it, I think that like another thing with being a first-time director, there's so much like stress in every capacity, but you also now have like a 40 to 60, depending on your size, crew that is also watching you. So I think that like a lot of the times when there might have been a stressful moment, like we would just go away as a group, quickly talk about it, and then come back with a plan, which I think that like space together is important.
Cool, we talked about production. Let's talk about kind of like premiere, distribution, such. So Sundance, I'm sure it felt like super full circle. for you. How was the festival experience, especially with like being involved in labs?
So cool.
Yeah.
It was pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, I really like. I get emotional thinking about it because it's been almost a year, you know. But it was this thing where it was like that was kind of the dream, you know. Like everything that happened after Sundance was just like still the dream, but like getting into Sundance, and I think we were all at Sundance the year before because I had just done the screenwriting labs, and I just remember being at that Sundance. And I think we saw Val's movie, Fremont. We were at that premiere, and I went to the premiere of Past Lives also. And I just remember just being like, man, if we get to premiere our movie here 1 year, like next year, and it feels half as special as this, like dream made, can die happy type thing. And I think that's kind of the thing that we kind of gun for, just remembering that feeling, like coming off the Screenwriters Lab of like the Screenwriters Lab really helped me focus, like reminded me why I wanted to make the movie, because I think up until then, it started interfacing with the industry in a very public way, or not public, but like, oh, what if we cast this person, and and it was just like, what is the movie I want to make? And like all of a sudden there was just like, do we bend it this way to get it made in this direction? But it's actually a movie that needs to go this direction, and I think just trying to figure that out, and the labs helped me recenter that, and the festival was just like, oh, this is our goal. This is our North Star for the next 365 days. And it was hard, you know, there were conversations where like, cause we shot it in the summer and we wrapped September 1st. And it was sort of like, if we have any chance of even submitting to Sundance, like we have to like really, really like whiplash it, you know, like 7-day weeks, like 14, 16-hour days. Like, and I think we were all just really committed to that because we were like, we know in success, like that would be the dream. Like, to get to kind of be back here 1 year. But it was hard and it was really hard work. So when we got the call that we got into Sundance, I called him, I just started crying.
Yeah, I saw the face. I snapped a little FaceTime shot of him crying.
Yeah, I have the screenshot too.
Just be from me, Sean, don't worry.
We have it right I'll here. post it.
And then I think we kind of went into Sundance, like, you know, we didn't show the movie to any distributors. We kind of kept it very pure, and yeah, I'll let you guys talk about that.
Well, I mean, I think when we saw the film, we knew we had something that we were very proud of. And that I think was a version of what, I mean, everyone's got a jack-o'-lantern in their head, right? Only a couple people can cut it the way they think about it, right? And I think Sean very much carved his masterpiece, in my opinion, like one of it, in a way that felt very genuine to the process. We saw this thing, we were very proud of it, and now the idea is like, let's not announce this to the 10 or 12 people in the industry that can buy it. Let's announce this to the audiences that will wrap their arms around it. And that was very much our ethos, is how do we get people that we respect, but also that we feel like can evangelize both Sean and the film in the room. And that was the exercise. And we brought in a publicist, and Sean, to his credit, allowed so much access to him and his process through the Sundance journey that a lot of filmmakers don't. There are a lot of filmmakers who are like, no, I don't, I'm too vulnerable, or and he was there with his grandma, his whole family was there. Like, it was a very, but again, an extension of the film, an extension of the script, an extension of production. So it all felt very natural, but it's just so surreal, guys. I mean, like, you know, my dad's 80 years old and he still goes to the gas station to get lottery scratchers. He has not won yet. I feel like we went to the gas station and got a scratcher to some degree. Like, it just feels very surreal sitting here talking to you all. I think so we're very grateful that you were here showing up for that. So, and to Sean's credit, I'm just so proud to be a small part of this. So, but the Sundance, anyway, Sundance experience, tops. It was the tops.
Yeah, best week of my life for sure. One of them. But that week was like,
I think it was the best one.
yeah, one of them. It was just
I
like,
also got Oscar nominated for the Oscar that week
yeah.
too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. How could I forget about those two events?
Yeah, it was like, truly, I look back because everybody's like, your life's gonna change, and it was like the week ended and I got nominated for an Oscar. We won Sundance, and then I got back and like my room was a mess, and I was just like,
what does it all mean?
Yeah, I was like, I don't think my life changed.
Is that a dream?
And then like a week from that day, it was like, oh, I think my life changed.
The room was clean.
Yeah, my room.
The room was clean. Your life had changed. And to your point about that too, because it is now picked up by Focus Features, how did you pair that? And was it their team that really just like understood it, or were you just ready to be like, because you had released it to the audiences, like you said, and you were like, this is the audience for this is the best place for it? How did that go?
I'll jump in, but I won't. I do like the sound of my own voice, so I will stop talking. I think we walked in and saying that the premiere, there was something in the air in that night, and then we felt like we had something. And then we started getting emails being like, we'd like to add a second screening. We'd like to add a third screening. So we knew, okay, there's people transacting on this movie in a way that there's an audience, and there's an active audience that's seeking this thing out that Sean had created. And I think that was us, it was like, again, like, I think we have something here. And I think we realized that, and every time we passed the baton off to somebody else through the process, it didn't work out as well. So how do we keep the baton in our hand and push through the process? And I think we were very conscious of, because you can go into Sundance and be like, if you don't have a sale the night of the premiere, like something's wrong with the movie. And that's just like not the ecosystem, that's not the business environment we're in right now. Things take time. Distributors are very calculated about their decision. You need to get marketing departments to see it, all this type of stuff. So we were just very patient. And then we started adding screenings and we started getting really good reviews. And the movie broke out outside of the Hollywood Reporter and IndieWire, who were very kind to us. But like, it started reaching New York Times and Vanity Fair, and then like Joan is a revelation in the movie. People were reminded that she's a big movie star, right?
Yeah.
So anyway. Well.
Oh, I was also just gonna say, like, in the spirit of Proof Festival, like, just to talk about the actual logistics of what it is, like, you, in your production budget, you should include things for festivals, and that includes a publicist. So, like, a publicist being attached to the film is very important. They help in all of those regards of what Josh was just saying, of like helping it get out to those first couple ones, and then like Josh said, it kind of just like took on a life of its own after that. But then you also have your sales agents attached to, and those are the people that are really like helping you set those meetings, and then like we said earlier, he gets in the room with somebody and then sells the film.
And I think I'll speak to focus a little bit. I think the thing that, you know, sold us fully on focus was just, you know, we had a few offers, but our first meeting with them, they didn't make an offer. And we were kind of like, okay, well, what is this? And they were kind of like, look, our slate is super full, but we love the movie, and we really just wanted to meet you, and we want to make this work, but like, we don't want to take on your movie unless we can actually do it right and do you, you know, and the movie, the sort of theatrical release it deserves. And we're kind of like, okay, this is all good and like handshake, but like you didn't make an offer and you said you weren't unless you like moved stuff around. And then they came back to us and they were like, we moved our entire calendar of the year so that we could put you as a summer release, and we're gonna da-da-da. And we're like, oh wow, they like are really putting their money where their mouth is and like really figuring out a strategy on like how they can actually wrap their arms around the movie. And so I think it was, again, to Josh, you know, Val's point, like, oh, we're chasing the love, like we can really tell, even before like our movie belongs to them. That sounds weird, but like, but like, oh, they really care about this movie, and they're really to sort of go the sort of extra mile to like make sure like we feel good about the release.
And you weren't seeing that from any other distributors, like the meetings you were having, you think?
Not to the level.
No, I think Sean and everybody, but specifically Sean, is like, I really feel like this is a summer movie. It's the summer between this transitional point in people's lives. Everybody can relate to it. Releasing this movie in February of March of the next year, in the middle of winter, like, it's just a different feeling. And I think, I would say that we felt a lot of love from a lot of different places. We felt very taken care of. We felt like halfway through the festival, we felt like we're gonna be in a good spot, right? Regardless of where we landed. And I think, to Sean's point, the fact that they did the gymnastics of moving things around and say like, okay, we're hearing that you want it to be a summer movie, let's make this a summer movie. That was it. I mean, that was it. It made it really easy. And I know that was a tough decision for them, but they promised, everything they promised, they delivered upon. And I think that's a really rare thing to feel about it. Because there's this disconnect sometimes between the artist and the buyer, right? And I think that they did a good job of breaking those walls down and meeting us where we kind of wanted to be.
Awesome.
I was just gonna say they're so great. Like, they really do like listen. You know, they listen to the filmmakers, and it's honestly been such a pleasure working with them.
For sure, I love the marketing so much, and just like all of the different strategies they were putting into place, and some of the activations and stuff. Did y'all have like, were you involved in that process and like giving suggestions and stuff? What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think to Val's point, like we were, I think, more involved than most filmmakers, and I think it was, again, to Focus's credit, and I think to the initial conversations we had with them of like, hey, like, we don't want this to be an experience where you buy our movie and they're like, goodbye, like, let us do our thing. It was very much this movie that interfaces with a lot of subcultures, you know, the skate community and the sort of like Warped Tour pop punk community. And in making the movie, because we had to clear all these brands and music, like, we got to know a lot of our favorite bands and these, you know, bands and brands of, you know, skate, you know, like, we had, like, Spike knew about the movie before the movie came out, and like, so it was sort of like all these people sort of like, we felt like we had this sort of support from the communities as opposed to just like, and these communities that don't really like to be advertised to. And so that's kind of how we pitched it. We were like, we have these, like, you know, like Stephanie Shu was in the movie, and it was kind of like, we have all these people who are kind of like our guardian angels already, who sort of like will lift our movie up because they believe in the small, personal, indie passion project version of this movie. And in releasing the movie, in marketing the movie, like, we need to retain that spirit, and that spirit needs to come from us. Like, you guys can't replicate that. Like, you guys are a studio. We didn't market, but like, ultimately it was sort of like, allow us to do the work that we've already been doing with the movie, and like, allow us to sort of, you know, build stuff with our communities that we already sort of have relationships with, and let it be this grassroots thing. And obviously, like, you know, we'll kind of meet in the middle because, you know, you guys have the reach of, you know, the small studio, I guess, small studio. But again, to that credit, they sort of were like, okay, cool, yeah, like, let's kind of meet on both ends, and like, what do you guys need? And I mean, it was a lot of conversation still, but even like the trailer, you know, they were kind of like sending us cuts, and I've talked with other filmmakers, and they were kind of like, yeah, we aren't allowed to get involved. And I was like, oh, we were very involved.
For sure, that's awesome. I do want to know, how did Spike Jonze get involved? Can we talk about it?
Harassed him. No, I mean, he's literally the reason I became a filmmaker, and I was just lucky enough to have gotten to meet him after we wrapped. Yeah, after we wrapped like the first week, and we just had like a long conversation, kind of hit it off, and it was really, really lovely. And I was just like, wow, like, that was the best version of sort of meeting the person who is the reason this movie exists in a weird way. And we kind of stayed in touch here and there, and like, mostly like his assistant. But you know, he makes all these amazing cameos in other movies, and we had the dead squirrel, and it was my voice for a long time. But I was kind of like, oh wait, this would be like, Spike would be perfect for this. And you know, he did say, he was like, if you need anything, like, let me know. And I was like, oh, but you know, people say it. But then I kind of hit him up, and I was like, hey, would you want to voice a dead squirrel?
We're like, you said anything.
Yeah, and you know, and he was like, I would love to. And so I was directing Spike over Zoom, and I was like, he was like, how was that? I was like, it was great.
It's awesome. Yeah, and you gave him a shout out in Hags too. There's like a little part where you're like, heart.
Yeah. He saw that short, and we were like talking about it, and I was like, ooh, did you see your shout out? He was like, I did. He was like, I was very flattered, and I was like, oh, this is so embarrassing.
Love that. And then I just want to ask one more question before maybe turning to the audience.
Get your questions ready.
Yeah.
I think this last one now, it's, you've done all this work, you've worked with Focus, you have the marketing, now it's out in the world, and it's kind of like, you know, out of your hands at this point. How has been the release been for you guys? Speechless. They're speechless.
I mean, it's been great. Like, doing stuff like this is really fun, and like, honestly, it's just a dream come true. Like, being able to walk into an AMC and see the poster is so mind-blowing, you know.
And is it still coming out in other countries?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Available on Peacock, if you guys have a subscription.
Exclusively.
No, and then we've
VOD.
got full price PVOD, if you guys want to pay full price. But greatly appreciated. All kidding aside, I think that what we found in the release was a very passionate audience that saw themselves in the movie. And I think what we talked about is in how specific the movie is, there is a universal theme of growing up and finding a group of people that you can fail in front of and still feel comfortable being yourself. I think that's what we found in this movie. It's what I will strive to find on movies from here on out. I think it's what the lab's created for Sean, is the ability to fall and try new things and fail and then get back up and have this community that lifts you up. So the release very much showed us that there are people out there that sort of connect with the film in an emotional way. Like I had a 65-year-old guy crying because he was like, I see myself in the movie and I see my son. And they couldn't be further away from 2008, you know? So anyway, it was beautiful.
Amazing. Look, we got questions. Please come on up to the mic. We'd love to hear them.
So,
Oh, and here we go. Yes.
are we doing a good job?
Yeah, we need a little validation here.
Good at talking?
I was just curious, based on like sort of the tight shooting schedule and having like the 25 days, how often on set were you solving problems by writing, and how often did you not have the capability of solving by writing, and then you kind of had to work with what you already had on the page? If that makes sense? And then follow up, is a favorite non-spike skate video for you?
Okay. Favorite non-spike skate video, Back of Suck. And yeah, I mean, I feel like the times where we would solve the problems in writing was always the night before. It was sometimes like, okay, what are we doing tomorrow? And it's like, oh, I don't know. We would figure out like, oh, what we need tomorrow based off the location or something. I would always try and write it. If it was a writing problem, I'd do it I'd change it the night before. We'd send the new sides, but on the day, I feel like we didn't rewrite.
I think you
a ton of
really
stuff.
did that, yeah.
I mean, we let the kids improv a lot, but most of, I think, the problem solving on the day was like cutting shots or figuring out how to combine shots.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I feel like a big issue that we had was Isaac is in every shot of the movie, and having a minor and working with those hours, it became really difficult. So something that I would have done differently if I did this again would be hiring an official body double instead of using Sean.
I had like 3 body doubles on set, and I sort of became like the last minute go-to.
There's a couple shots that it's just Sean.
Hey guys, I think amongst me and my friends who are in the industry, your guys' film has kind of become this like amazing success story of like indie filmmaking, and that we like reference a lot and like kind of draw inspiration from in terms of how you guys approached it. So, but I think sometimes like it can be smoke and mirrors when you haven't quite done it yet of like how indie filmmaking actually happens. So I'm curious if you guys as producers can talk about like making the decisions about like where you had to like actually put money behind, where you like pulled in favors, where you were like scrappy, and just like kind of like talk about those compromises.
Thank you. That's so cool to hear. Yeah, I think that like I have a really vast budget experience, so like I'm like, to my credit, I guess, like Sean said earlier, is like I'm really good at like moving numbers around and things like that. But there was a couple places, like I guess a good example is Golfland. Like that scene was originally scripted to be in a mall. Like just like kids hanging out at the mall with the food court, and it was just something that wasn't within our means to shut down a mall.
It was also the ugliest mall in the world.
It was a little disappointing when we
and
got
Carlos
there.
were like, please, please, please just do the creative exercise. This mall sucks.
Golfland ended up being so much better. Like it was a blessing in disguise. It's so like much more visually pleasing. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It is, there is a lot of smoke and mirrors involved in it, but I just think that like you just need to think about what the creative goal is at the end of it, always, you know, because like that moment we were like, okay, well, does the mall actually matter, or is what is happening at the mall matter? Because then the location doesn't matter, and then we can save 20 grand, you know.
That's a really good. Were you gonna say something?
No, I mean, I think. Well, yeah, I am actually.
You want to hear him talk?
Keep talking. Thanks. No, I mean, to Val's point, a lot of it is our job is the fulcrum of available resources and creative ambition, and how do we create that balance?
That's a Joshism, by the way.
Right? And that's, yeah. No, I mean, and I think that you're going to go out there with your crew, and you're going to figure out and then lean into the people that say yes and lead with love. If there's a shorthand with the DP, if there's a shorthand with all HOTs, use them. Don't worry about the fancy names. Work with the people that you have a shorthand with, and get your first yes financially, no matter what level it is, and lean into that and use that, because there are people that are waiting for other people to jump in first. As soon as you get that first person in, it is shocking. It was shocking to us. 9 days later, we had the rest of the money. Once we got that first investment. So do not give up hope. It is possible, and when it does happen, it will go like that, and you will be better for it.
Thank you.
That was a good question.
Yeah, great question.
Those were good answers.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for making the movie. I cried in theaters, which I don't usually let myself do. I have a question regarding the script, mainly for Sean. When you're writing something so autobiographical, how do you make sure it's still interesting for other people? And what are some of like the biggest notes you got? Kind of just touching on being universal with something so closely.
That's a really good question.
Yeah, that's really good. You guys are smart. Yeah, you know, I think from the very beginning I wasn't interested in writing like a memoir. I always knew, I think I had enough distance from that time in my life also that I could look at it objectively, but I was also close enough to it still where there were certain things that were like I was processing in the present day. And I think a lot of the movie honestly was like growing up, entering my 20s and looking back and being like, oh, like that was, like for example, the "you're cute for an Asian" line. Like in the movie, like Wang treats it as a compliment. It's like, oh, like they mean it as a compliment. She says it as a compliment. He's like not offended by it because it's a net positive, all intents and purposes for them. But like in my 20s, and like I talked to a lot of my friends about it, like they'd be like, oh, I heard that too, and we were always like, oh, that's a compliment, that's a badge of honor. But then you're like, you grow up and look back, you're like, oh, that's kind of insidious and weird and not a compliment at all. But it was. So it's like very layered, and we're like, oh, like that's kind of the movie. Like it's those things that you're kind of like unpacking and that were like both personal and universal and all this kind of stuff. But again, like, I think I just wasn't interested in writing a memoir, and I think because I had done so many documentaries that were in a weird way like based off of my family and things that I knew so closely, I had developed this muscle of like taking something that was true and then like making it a narrative. Like it had to work as a story before it could just be like, I didn't think anything was interesting in the movie just because it happened. Everything in the movie had been modified or changed to like fit the themes of our story, which was, and that's something I really, I think, honed in on at the Sundance Screenwriters Lab, which was, Lulu Wang was one of my advisors, and she became like a, you know, dear friend through it all, but she went through the same experience on The Farewell, which was, you know, the advice she gave me was you have to completely remove yourself from the personal once you get all that on the page. Like you have all this stuff that's vivid and lived in, and it's characters that you can't make up. It's so rich and textured. Now remove yourself from it, and what do you have? What is your theme? And she was like, and we talked about the theme, which was, you know, blah, 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 shame, blah, blah, blah. But then it was like, okay, well, that's your theme, but like you have 4 scenes here that are just funny, that don't serve your theme at all. So like either rewrite it so it serves your theme or cut it. Like your scenes have to do 2 things at least. They can't just be funny. And so that was like a big sort of, you know, we went back and did like the creative exercise of like, okay, like what is each scene doing and how is it serving our theme? And if it's not, again, I had to be like, okay, how important is this scene? Do we make the funny more relatable to the theme or do we cut it? And that we did that for basically every scene.
Cool, thank you.
Hi, so excited to be here, so grateful for all of y'all's knowledge. I have a question about the lab. So I know that you mentioned that was a big part of your growth and maturity as a filmmaker. What happens if you get stuck and you don't find yourself getting into labs and you're just so eager to gain that maturity? What advice do you have, including things like Antigravity and No Film School? What are other resources you can tap into?
I'm gonna plug Antigravity Academy's Screenwriters Camp real quick.
Yes, I told Windsor I would.
Yes, the application's open soon, and it's a screenwriters camp, so it's for first-time filmmakers that have a script, and you guys should definitely apply if you have one. I think that if you are getting stuck, that's like a totally reasonable thing to, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, and I would suggest instead of trying to like reach out to these institutions for help, I would just go to your colleagues and like work with the people around you, and because realistically, like that's what Sean did. He reached out to the people around him, and then it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. And earlier you were saying like smoke and mirrors. I think that like this was my first film that I produced as like producer capital P. This was his first directing, Carlos's first producing. He's really like has so much experience. But like
Thanks Dad.
No, he's cool.
He's all right. He's all right. Thank you, Val. I appreciate it. I'll write that on my tombstone.
Cool. But yeah, I mean, like, you have a community around you, and like, I think that's like your most valuable resource.
Thank you.
So was it friends that you were, when you said you were reaching out to people around you, was it just like friends of yours, or were they also filmmakers you trusted? Just a quick follow-up.
In regards to what?
You
It's
said
both.
you did.
It-
Oh,
yeah.
both, yeah.
Like, cause Sam was someone that
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think it was, let me try and answer your question too. I think it is like, I think again, I was just very, very lucky and fortunate that I did end up getting to do the lab. I applied to the labs 3 times and didn't get in 3 times. And so
Thank
it
you
was.
for saying that.
But it was like, I was gonna make this movie regardless of the labs and the development things. It was sort of just like, I'm on my path and I'm, again, trying to like, me and Sam and like a few of our college friends did like a table read of like the very first draft of this script or something, like an early draft, back in like early 2018. And it was just kind of like, we're gonna figure out a way to do this, you know, on our own, on whatever terms. I have this, there's this story of Daniels when they were doing Swiss Army Man. It was kind of that thing, you know, they were like, we wanted to write a movie that we wanted to make, and so like at the end of the day, like somehow they got, you know, Daniel Radcliffe and Paul Dano, but I remember watching an interview with them, they were like, if it came down to it, it was gonna star the 2 Daniels. There was like, and that was kind of the ethos of this movie. It was like, what can we write that, you know, going back to in-kind donations, it was like, we can make the version of this that is just producible on like the smallest terms and on our own terms too. And so I think we found, you know, a healthy balance, but it was that sort of thing of, yeah, kind of what Val said, like look to the people around you, your friends, you know, like people, and I don't know, like I think you have this in this community of filmmakers, but like look to the people around who aren't filmmakers too. I think sometimes we get in our own bubble and it's like, oh, but the pacing here, but it's like just show your, like have your friend who's not a filmmaker read your script, and I think that gives you so much more insight than like someone who's looking for the plot hole of Save the Cat type thing.
Hi, I actually know your work from all your shorts. I remember when every time I'd watch them, I'd like, the pacing is so good. I love the modern way they introduce text messages and things like that. And I was always like, who edited this? And it would be you. So then, I guess my question is 2-part. Is one, I have a hard time when I direct or produce something to edit it, because you always have that director producer hat on where you're editing and also reviewing your own work. And then the second part is, in this feature, you have someone else editing your work. How did it feel, kind of like letting that go and finding the right person?
Yeah, well, I mean, thanks for watching the shorts. We worked with an editor, Ariel Zakowski, who's brilliant, genius. I want to do every movie with her. I think that was the part of the process that honestly was the most scary to me, because again, like, editing had been such a part of my process for the last 10, 12, whatever, since I started making things. I've never worked with an editor prior to Ariel. I worked with an editor at the Sundance Labs, Day Show Broadway, who again was like my first time ever really working with an editor, and I was just like, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, I felt like I was like, oh, let me get in there, and I think with Ariel it was this thing where, you know, I remember saying to them like, I'm scared of what that collaboration is going to be like, especially knowing that our edit is going to be so intense and so insane, and gonna, you know, I don't want to be locked in a room with someone that I don't like. And so they were like, all right, well, like, let's start, you know, Val sent me a list of editors, and I was like, let's start interviewing people. And I remember just having coffee with Ariel, and then I think being like, I don't want to meet anyone else, I think she's the one. And I just met with her like 5 more times. And I just kind of, you know, it's that thing where you feel, or I'm like, oh, I think we're friends. Like, I want to hang with you. Like, we can just hang and make stuff, and it's like one and the same. And I think that was, she brought so much to the movie. And like, I think I also knew that at the end of the day, I had my own edit instincts I could lean on as well, just having that background. But like, to be able to lean on her, and she gave the movie so much that I knew I couldn't get the movie there myself, which is why I wanted to work with an editor. But that was also why my shorts always took like 1.5 years, 2 years to finish, because I couldn't see the forest from the trees. I'd get stuck on something, I'd send it to like 10 friends, and it would take like a month to get their notes back. And I would just be like, oh, I don't know, this is good. And with Ariel and Chris, our assistant editor, and then with our producers, it was just very much just like, is this working? Like, which one's better? And we just like solved it in 10 seconds, and then we could just move on. It was just like rapid speed problem solving.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here. A question regarding the pitching process. Did you create anything in addition to having the script, any supporting material, and also especially when it came to the financiers? Well, you guys talked about getting the filmmaker in front of the financiers. So what happened to you at that point? What were some of the questions they were asking you, or can you just talk a little bit more about that process?
Yeah, so a formal submission is going to have, the log line, the script. A lot of times it will have a lookbook with it, which we did. It'll have a budget attached. It will have bios of all the producers, the director. Am I missing anything?
No, I mean, in previous work, and then just like honestly, just a plan that's just beyond the horizon where it's relevant enough to talk about in this moment, right? So I would encourage everyone that's putting projects together to like make it just beyond, just on the horizon line, because if you're talking about something that you're going to shoot in fall of 2026, any sort of financiers can be like, great, let's keep talking, come back to me when you're more serious about it. So just put it a little bit on beyond the reach. Don't put it too close, because you'll never get it done. But I think that's just something that we realize is like, let's make this relevant enough to be having the conversation now.
Because that matters for their quarters too, like financial quarters. That's why they care about that, and also just like relevancy if it can happen,
I think to Josh and Val's point, like anything you can do to convince people that it's real. Like every movie in Hollywood is like a fake movie until and you're just like convincing people that no, it will be real, and it's just not real until it just one day becomes real. And then to that point, like it can still fall apart. But like that was kind of I think it was Josh's idea. It was like, you want to shoot in the summer? And I was like, yeah, but we don't have anything. He was like, well, just tell people we're shooting in the summer. And I was like, I did say that.
I also when I
could have gone another direction.
When I came on, like I had never been a part of a project that was just an idea.
You were very good.
I was
your
well, we're doing
organized
it, right?
mind was very much like, is this going to happen? And you were like, we're going to fly a little close to the sun, but it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I'd never been a part of something that was just an idea, so I was just like, well, there's no reason why we wouldn't.
And I think going back to that idea of chasing the love, like, and this is maybe just a flawed way of how the industry works, but maybe you guys can talk more about it, but like I look back and I'm like, we were working for free on this movie for months before any promise or guarantee of like we were even gonna make it. And I mean, for me, that's obviously such a blessing, because like, I remember we brought on Val, and it was like very quickly we realized like, oh, we cannot make this movie without her. She like became such an integral part of our process, and that's when it was really just like, oh, this is the four of us, like me, Carlos, Josh, Val. But like, we weren't getting paid on this movie for until like...
I still haven't gotten paid.
So,
checks in the mail.
Just kidding.
But it was that, like you're putting so much, and like for me too, and it was like, okay, we want to shoot the movie in July, and it's January, and we're kind of like, are we not? I was like turning down other jobs because I was like, I need to prep the movie if we're going to shoot. So it is this sort of like gamble that you're taking, and but to Josh's point, like that's kind of, you have to build your own momentum, and we were just like, we had a little bit of money from grants, and so we were just like, let's just start casting the movie, let's just start building the movie, and like give as much like sense of like, this is real, like we're gonna make it happen, like we're making this movie with or without you, even though we can't make it without you. But we're making this movie
Don't tell them
without you. Don't tell them that. But it was that sort of, I think, like in a weird way, like passion that I think was kind of infectious, and I think ultimately that's what our principal financiers on Unapologetic Projects, God bless them.
Yeah.
It was that, I had a Zoom with them, and they just, I could just tell they loved the script and they loved the project, and in the Zoom I was like, okay, they get it, they get where this movie's coming from, and I just remember like really being excited and passionate and just I just remember pitching the movie better than I've ever pitched it before, and I just got like possessed. Because I was like, oh, I really do think if I sell the vision of this well, it's not like, oh, cool, good luck with that. It's like, this is like, will I or won't I meeting. And I remember hanging up, and we went to go scout in the Bay Area the next day, and they were on a plane, and so they didn't have Wi-Fi, and I got an email that was like, from them, that was like, we love Sean, we love the movie, we love the project, we want to co-finance the movie. And I was like, guys, can you please get off this plane?
When we got our Wi-Fi, Carlos, Josh, and I just looked at each other and were like, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, yeah, I've been waiting for an hour, but like,
That's right.
what do we do with this
San Jose,
information?
back.
And so I don't know if that answers your question necessarily, but it was very much like a build the train and they'll come.
Yeah, and I think
And also being realistic.
Totally. And if you're fortunate enough to have raise a little bit of money, a couple $1,000, $10,000, whatever it is, I think Sean's point and Val's point, like, spend the money on stuff that can be transferable if the movie doesn't go in that moment. So budget's a good example. That's a movable feast, right? You can do that. Casting director, like getting the tapes, if it's going to be a discovery piece, spend the time and energy because that's going to take time, right? So use that. Don't worry about housing. Don't worry about locations yet. Just get a number you feel good about. And if the movie doesn't go in the 6 months that you say it's going to go, you can move that. You can take that stuff that you paid for. It's not sunk costs. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. You guys are getting long answers to very short questions. Sorry.
This is great.
We can do these two and then.
I'm sure you've heard this like a million times, but thank you for putting our hometown on film. I literally just ran into someone I went to high school with. We went to American.
Wow.
So that's crazy. But my question is, I'm an intimacy coordinator, so I watch a lot of films through the lens of like consent. And a scene that was super like really stood out to me was the "Are you comfortable" scene on the playground, and especially working with minors, I was curious how you like kind of talked to the talent about that scene, how you kind of navigated like pretty heavy topics for someone at that age.
I mean, first and foremost, we work with an intimacy coordinator and, let them kind of lead the way and, sort of obviously like, hey, talking to first them, like, this is how I plan to shoot it, like, is this okay? We had to basically film a previs of that with like, I think it was like,
I think it's you
Star
and Carlos.
Martini, and it was like, can we do this? And very, very much like getting on the same page of what we're gonna do. And then with the teenagers, very much like talking to them beat by beat every moment and like rehearsing with them, not necessarily even the scene, but just like, okay, like, is this something you're comfortable with? Like, she's gonna put her hand here, and then just kind of making sure that we're all on the same page, moment. Because again, like while you're shooting the scene, like we're like, hey, do not do this. Like, there's lines, I'm not gonna go in while the camera's rolling. And so it was very much like being on the same page and making sure there's no surprises, like, because sometimes you want that spontaneity in certain parts, but like with certain scenes, it's just like, this is what we're doing, here's the context and everything, but like, yeah, like drawing your boundaries.
Also with minors, like the studio teacher is very involved with the intimacy coordinator.
Hi, thank you again so much for saying, like, also shooting in my hometown as well. It definitely means a lot. It's definitely surreal to kind of see my hometown represented in like a visual, like, cinematic way. Regarding like my question, I was kind of wondering if you could go a little more in depth about like your collaboration with your EP and trying to figure out like their vision and trying to make sure like you're all on the same page. And like just in general regarding like the look of it, but also like what you wanted.
Yeah, well, I think I learned on this movie too that like collaborating with your DP is also collaborating with your producer and collaborating with your production designer. Like those, it's like a four-way puzzle. Like me and Sam would be like, oh, we should get a crane here, but it's like, okay, that's just not good enough. And like I think with Val's expertise and her sort of problem solving with us, it's sort of like, okay, that's the creative vision, but like we can't afford that, so how can we move some things around? Like what part of that is the most important, for story, and what can we kind of like work around? And so again, it was like some days we're like, we need the steady cam here, and it's like, okay, well, where are you we have to lose something, and we kind of talk about what's important to the story. And then as far as setting the look, Sam and I, again, Sam, just as a friend, has been with this movie since like its inception, and so over the course of 6-7 years, as we were growing as filmmakers, we were sort of anything we saw that could that felt like it fit the tone of this movie, we would just send each other and be like, oh, what do you think of this as like potential DD? Like it was like, I remember when we first learned about film outs, we were like, oh, should we do a film out for this was like 6 years ago when we had no idea if we were ever gonna make it. But he was like, oh, look at the film out on this is like real, like we could shoot a digital and film out. And so it was just like years and years of collecting ideas and references. And then Sam, before we shot, during prep, he made like what we call the Bible now, like the DD Bible. And it was just like so many reference images from other movies, photographers, YouTube videos and skate videos. And it was just like this sort of it had like, I think once you start shooting, it just becomes its own thing. But it was like, to Josh's point, like something. It was like 60 pages of just like download, and it was like immediately we knew on set like, this is right, this is not right, like this is like, you know, he'd be like, should we push in? I was like, no, the Bible, dude, no pushing, stillness. He wrote a line in the movie, in the Bible that we kept referencing that was like, for the home stuff especially, it was like, the camera weighs 1,000 pounds, stillness is like a 13-year-old's worst nightmare. And it was like, oh, that's the language of the movie, at least in the home. It was like, that stillness has to be contrasted with incredible movement and sort of like adolescent chaos. But I think it was just sort of like certain things in that Bible, we just sort of was like, oh, this is the language of the movie. And then you're on set and you're trying to figure things out like in seconds. But like, we always had that sort of in our hearts.
Are you gonna publish the Bible ever?
Sent it to Shot Deck. I don't know if they're gonna.
Oh. They're just here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. This is amazing. Give it up for our panelists.
Thank you guys.